The Humble Peasant and the Sleeping Princess. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a beautiful princess. She was kind and gentle, and everyone who knew her loved her. One day, a wicked sorcerer cast a spell on the princess, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. The kingdom was plunged into mourning, and the princess's parents, the king and queen, were heartbroken. They offered a reward to anyone who could break the spell and bring their beloved daughter back to them. Many brave knights tried to save the princess, but none of them were able to break the sorcerer's powerful magic. Just when all hope seemed lost, a humble and kind-hearted peasant came forward. The peasant was no warrior, but he had a pure and noble heart. He went to the sorcerer's castle and asked to be allowed to see the princess. The sorcerer, feeling generous, granted the peasant's request. As the peasant gazed upon the princess's sleeping face, he was filled with a love so strong that he knew he had to save her. He closed his eyes and made a wish with all his heart. To everyone's amazement, the spell was broken, and the princess awakened. She was overjoyed to see the peasant, and as they looked into each other's eyes, they both knew that they were meant to be together. The princess and the peasant were married in a grand ceremony, and they lived happily ever after. The kingdom rejoiced at the breaking of the spell, and the wicked sorcerer was never seen again. The brave Queen Sophia and the Dragon. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a young princess named Sophia. Sophia was known throughout the kingdom for her kindness, intelligence, and beauty. She was beloved by all who knew her, and it was no surprise when she eventually inherited the throne. As queen, Sophia ruled with a fair and just hand. She worked tirelessly to improve the lives of her subjects, and her kingdom flourished under her leadership. She was also a diplomat, and used her skills to negotiate peace with the neighboring kingdoms. One day, a terrible dragon terrorized the kingdom, destroying villages and causing widespread fear and panic. Sophia knew she had to do something to protect her people. She called upon the bravest knights in the land to slay the dragon, but none of them were successful. Determined to save her kingdom, Sophia decided to take matters into her own hands. She donned her armor and set out to face the dragon herself. The dragon, sensing a worthy opponent, flew down from its perch and engaged Sophia in battle. The two clashed with all their might, but in the end, Sophia emerged victorious. She had slain the dragon and saved her kingdom. The people rejoiced and hailed her as a hero. Sophia, humbled by their adoration, vowed to continue to rule justly and protect her kingdom and its people for all time. The Magic Beanstalk and the Poor Farmer Jack. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the rolling hills of the countryside, there lived a poor but hard-working farmer named Jack. Jack was a kind and gentle man, but he had a tough life. He worked from dawn till dusk every day, tending to his fields and caring for his small flock of sheep. Despite his hard work, Jack barely had enough to get by. He lived in a tiny cottage with a leaky roof and barely enough food to feed himself and his wife. But Jack was content with his simple life. He loved his wife and his work, and he was grateful for what he had. One day, a terrible storm swept through the village, wreaking havoc on Jack's fields and destroying his crops. Jack was devastated. Without his crops, he had no way to make a living. He and his wife would be forced to leave their home and seek work in the city. But Jack was not one to give up easily. He decided to try one last time to save his farm. He took out a loan and used it to buy a handful of magic beans. He had heard that these beans could grow into giant beanstalks that reached all the way to the clouds. Jack planted the beans and waited patiently. To his surprise, a beanstalk began to grow before his very eyes, reaching higher and higher into the sky. Jack was filled with excitement and hope. He climbed the beanstalk, determined to find a way to save his farm. At the top of the beanstalk, Jack found himself in a magical land filled with wonder and adventure. He encountered giants and talking animals, and he even found a pot of gold. But most importantly, he found a way to save his farm and provide a better life for his wife. And so, Jack returned home a hero, his pockets filled with gold and his heart filled with joy. He used the gold to fix his roof, buy new seeds, and pay off his loan. His farm flourished, and he and his wife lived happily ever after. The Magic Shepherdess, Maria and the Lost Lamb. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the rolling hills of the countryside, there lived a kind and gentle sheepherder named Maria. She lived a simple life, tending to her flock of sheep and goats and tending to her small vegetable garden each day. One day, while out in the fields with her flock, Maria stumbled upon a lost lamb who had strayed from its mother. Maria took the lamb under her care, nursing it back to health and eventually adding it to her own flock. The lamb, who Maria named Timmy, became one of her most beloved animals, always following her closely and bleating happily whenever she returned from her daily chores. As the years passed, Maria's reputation as a caring and compassionate sheepherder grew, and soon she was known throughout the village as the shepherdess with the magic touch. Whenever an animal was sick or injured, its owner would bring it to Maria, knowing that she would do everything in her power to heal it. One cold winter's night, a terrible storm swept through the village, causing power outages and knocking down trees. In the midst of the chaos, a group of frightened sheep huddled together in a corner of their pen, too scared to move. Maria knew that she had to do something to calm the sheep and help them weather the storm. Wrapping herself in a warm blanket, Maria made her way to the sheep pen and began to sing a soothing lullaby. As she sang, the sheep slowly calmed down, listening to her gentle voice and finding comfort in the familiar sound. And when the storm had passed and the sun rose the next morning, the sheep were safe and sound, thanks to Maria's love and care. From that day on, Maria was known as the shepherdess with the magic voice, and the villagers knew that as long as she was around, their animals would always be safe and loved. The Singing Princess and the Lonely Prince. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the rolling hills of the countryside, there lived a young girl named Sophia. Sophia was known throughout the village for her kind heart and her beautiful singing voice. She would often spend her days wandering through the fields and forests, singing to the birds and the trees. One day, as Sophia was walking through the forest, she came upon a clearing and saw a handsome prince sitting by a bubbling stream. Sophia was immediately smitten, and the prince, who had been feeling lonely and depressed, was touched by Sophia's sweet voice and friendly manner. The prince asked Sophia to stay with him in the clearing, and the two spent the day talking and getting to know each other. As the sun began to set, the prince asked Sophia to marry him, and she happily accepted. And so, Sophia and the prince were married in a beautiful ceremony in the clearing, surrounded by all of their friends and loved ones. From that day on, Sophia and the prince lived happily ever after, singing and dancing together every day. Sir Gareth and the Sorcerer's Spell. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there was a brave knight named Sir Gareth. Sir Gareth was known throughout the land for his strength and his bravery, and he had saved the kingdom from many dangers and villains. One day, a wicked sorcerer cast a spell on the princess, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. The sorcerer declared that only a true hero could break the spell and save the princess. Sir Gareth, determined to save the princess and restore peace to the kingdom, set out on a quest to find the sorcerer and defeat him. After many days of travel and danger, Sir Gareth finally came upon the sorcerer's lair. The sorcerer was a formidable opponent, but Sir Gareth was skilled in combat and was able to defeat him. As the sorcerer lay dying, he revealed that the only way to break the spell was to obtain a rare and magical flower that grew on the top of a distant mountain. Sir Gareth knew that the journey to the mountain would be treacherous, but he was determined to save the princess. He set out immediately, braving fierce storms, steep cliffs, and dangerous beasts. After many weeks of travel, he finally reached the top of the mountain and plucked the magical flower. Returning to the kingdom, Sir Gareth used the flower to break the spell and save the princess. The kingdom rejoiced and Sir Gareth was hailed as a hero. The princess, grateful for her rescue, invited Sir Gareth to stay at the castle as her personal champion. Sir Gareth, honored by the offer, accepted and lived happily ever after at the castle, serving and protecting the princess and the kingdom. The brave villagers and the bandits. There was once a small village nestled in the heart of a dense forest. The villagers lived simple lives, tending to their gardens and livestock, and enjoying the peace and quiet of their remote home. One day, a group of bandits arrived in the village, demanding that the villagers hand over all of their food and valuables. The bandits were fierce and cruel, and the villagers knew they had no choice but to comply. As the bandits ransacked the village, a young woman named Maria stepped forward. She was small and unassuming, but she had a fierce determination in her eyes. "You can have our food and our possessions," she said, "but you will not take our freedom. We will fight back." The bandits laughed at Maria's defiance, but she was undaunted. She rallied the villagers and, using their knowledge of the forest and their skills in stealth, they launched a surprise attack on the bandits. The battle was fierce, but in the end, the villagers emerged victorious. The bandits fled into the forest, never to be seen again. Maria was hailed as a hero and the villagers built a statue in her honor. From that day on, the village was known as a place of strength and courage, and the villagers lived in peace and prosperity. The Princess and the Dragon. In a far-off kingdom, there was a beautiful princess who was renowned for her kindness and compassion. She was beloved by all who knew her, especially the poor and disadvantaged, who she often helped with her own resources. One day, a terrible dragon attacked left the kingdom in ruins. The princess, determined to help her people, offered to go and speak with the dragon herself and try to negotiate a peace. The dragon, who was actually quite intelligent and misunderstood, was touched by the princess's compassion and agreed to a peace treaty. The princess returned to the kingdom, triumphant and hailed as a hero. The dragon, true to its word, left the kingdom in peace, and the princess and the dragon became unlikely friends. The princess would often visit the dragon and the two would have long conversations about all manner of things. The kingdom prospered and the people lived happily ever after, thanks to the bravery and compassion of their beloved princess. The Brave Princess and the Cursed Dragon. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a kind and brave princess named Sophia. She lived in a beautiful castle nestled in the heart of a vast and magical forest. Sophia was beloved by all who knew her, for she was always ready to lend a helping hand and had a heart of gold. One day, a great dragon descended upon the kingdom, causing chaos and destruction wherever it went. The people were terrified and begged the princess to do something to save them. Without hesitation, Sophia put on her armor and set out to face the dragon. She rode her trusty steed deep into the forest, determined to defeat the beast and restore peace to her kingdom. As she drew near to the dragon's lair, Sophia could feel the heat of its fiery breath. She unsheathed her sword and prepared to do battle. But just as she was about to strike, the dragon spoke. "Please, Princess Sophia," it said in a voice filled with sorrow. "Do not harm me. I am not the cause of this destruction. I have been cursed by a wicked witch and have no control over my actions." Sophia was taken aback by the dragon's words, but she knew in her heart that it was telling the truth. She vowed to help the dragon break the curse and set out on a quest to find the witch's lair. After many days of travel, Sophia and the dragon arrived at the witch's hut, hidden deep in the darkest part of the forest. The witch was a cruel and powerful sorceress, but Sophia was not afraid. She confronted the witch and demanded that she lift the curse on the dragon. The witch laughed and refused, but Sophia would not be swayed. She drew her sword and threatened to defeat the witch if she did not comply. In the end, the witch relented and lifted the curse, and the dragon was restored to its true form, a noble creature. Sophia returned to her kingdom a hero, and the people rejoiced at her bravery and kindness. From that day on, peace and prosperity reigned in the kingdom, and Sophia and the dragon became the best of friends. The Angel of the Well. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the rolling hills of the countryside, there lived a young boy named Jack. Jack was a curious and adventurous soul, always eager to explore the world around him. One day, as he was wandering through the forest on the edge of the village, he stumbled upon a mysterious old well. It was covered in vines and cobwebs, and seemed to be abandoned. Jack peered into the well, but it was too dark to see the bottom. Undeterred, he found a small rock and dropped it into the well, listening as it fell down, down, down. Suddenly, to Jack's surprise, he heard a faint voice calling out from the well. "Help! Is anyone there?" it said. Without hesitation, Jack ran back to the village to get help. He gathered a group of strong men and together, they worked to pull the person out of the well. After much effort, they were able to rescue a beautiful young woman, who was covered in dirt and scratches. The woman, whose name was Belle, was deeply grateful to Jack and the others for rescuing her. She had been lost in the forest for days and had stumbled upon the well in a desperate search for water. Belle decided to stay in the village and help those in need, just as Jack and the others had helped her. She became known as the Angel of the Well, and was loved and respected by all who knew her. And as for Jack, he became a hero and a legend in the village, remembered for his bravery and quick thinking in rescuing Belle from the well. The two of them remained close friends for the rest of their days. The end. The Sleeping Princess and the Brave Knight. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there lived a beautiful princess named Aurora. Aurora was known throughout the land for her kindness, compassion, and wisdom. She was loved by all who knew her, and her kingdom flourished under her rule. One day, a dark sorcerer cast a spell on Aurora, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. The sorcerer hoped to take over the kingdom while the princess slept, but he had not counted on the bravery of Aurora's subjects. The people of the kingdom banded together and searched far and wide for a way to break the sorcerer's spell. They consulted with wise old wizards and searched through ancient texts, determined to find a way to save their beloved princess. After many months of searching, they finally found a way to break the spell. A brave young knight named Prince Philip volunteered to undertake the dangerous quest to retrieve the magical rose that held the key to waking Aurora from her slumber. Philip traveled through dark forests and across treacherous mountains, facing countless dangers along the way. But he never wavered in his determination to save the princess. At last, he reached the sorcerer's fortress and bravely fought his way past the sorcerer's minions. He grabbed the magical rose and returned to the kingdom, where he used it to wake Aurora from her sleep. The princess was overjoyed to be reunited with her people and thanked Philip for his bravery. Together, they defeated the sorcerer and brought peace and prosperity back to the kingdom. Aurora and Philip were married in a grand ceremony and ruled the kingdom wisely and justly, bringing happiness to all who lived within its borders. The end.